Hello and welcome back to VHawks Podcast. I'm Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by Matt. And today is a great day. The Vikings have the second victory of the season. I actually get to come on the podcast and be happy. And what's even better, Matt's team lost. Not that I'm rooting for his team to lose, but last time when his team won and mine lost, which is pretty much every week, he's been, having some fun, rubbing it in. So I get to do a little bit of that today, even though I probably won't get to because I'm too nice. But we'll see. I'll get some jabs here and there. But before we get into anything that happened last week, we do just want to give a shout out um, to Damian Harris for staying strong on the field, giving everybody a thumbs up as he was put in the ambulance, going to the hospital for his neck injury. We do wish him the best and we hope that he gets better soon. That was a very scary injury that he sustained during that game. And, our thoughts and prayers go out to him.
Yeah, sadly, the Bills have had a scary history in the past, like just this year with players and injuries. So, but with the thumbs up, that's a good sign with him going off the field. So hopefully, um, yeah, football is just something that doesn't even matter at that point. Just hope that everything comes out okay and it doesn't have any longer implications on the rest of his life. So yeah, prayers up to him. Prayers up to Bills Mafia and that whole team and his family. So
Absolutely. All right. Well, without further ado, let's get into some shocking games this week. As the Panthers started to build up an early lead against Miami. And then, of course, they gave it away because it is Miami. But two teams who did not surrender their leads or took it in the end were Cleveland and the Jets, beating the previously unbeaten San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles.
so with the San Fran game, we can both agree that that was just a game that was ugly. Um,
It's
San
a good
Fran,
defensive battle, but
yeah,
yeah, Brock Purdy did not have his best showing. But Cleveland's defense, man, I would argue their defense as a whole is the best in the league right now.
I'd agree it's top five. I need to look more into statistics, but with San Fran, the bigger news out of that game is the Christian McCaffrey injury and then the Debo
Debo Samuel.
Samuel injury. So just seeing what comes from that is going to be important for the rest of San Fran's year because I feel like we realized how much Christian McCaffrey means to that team, especially to Brock Purdy after he was out, because that offense basically stalled. Yeah, it was Cleveland's defense, but we saw the first drive of the game, San Fran moved the ball down the field easily, like
Yep.
no issues. Christian McCaffrey goes out, Debo Samuel goes out. You can start. One thing about San Fran's team is they have weapons everywhere. Like
Mhm.
they got in wide receivers, they got in tight ends, they got in the running back room, like everywhere. You can't really hone in on one thing. Debo Samuel goes out, Christian McCaffrey goes out. Now I can start looking at George Kittle and putting two guys on him. I know was it Brandon Ayuk?
Yep, that's the leading receiver.
Uh, Now I can start focusing on him more, just being able to focus on those other guys rather than having basically every single able receiver on the field. I have to be careful because they can get behind me or go for a big gain. Now I can start locking down on those one or two pieces rather than five pieces. San Fran becomes a lot more vulnerable to being just locked down. And yeah, San Fran's defense is good, but you just lost to PJ Walker.
Yeah. I mean, I will say there is some advantage to that. Playing PJ Walker, they had never had any tape of him on the Browns, so they didn't know what exactly they were going to get in terms of the play style with that offense. You could look back at his days of Carolina, but that's not going to give you too much of an idea. So I think you know, That's why guys like Gardner Minshew can fill in and normally do pretty well. I know he didn't this week, but in the past few games he's filled in pretty well. And I think it's because they get that experience, and then on a different team they can kind of adjust those skill sets. So definitely give PJ Walker his credit for
Yeah,
going up against that defense. But San Francisco's defense, they kind of self-destructed, especially in the second half. That last
a
drive
lot
by
of
Cleveland,
penalties,
it would seem like exactly. It seemed like there was a penalty every other play. So
especially
they've
once you
got
get
to
to the
they've got to fix
playoffs.
things up there.
Yeah, especially when you get to the playoffs and you actually have good quarterbacks, you can't do that. Like
Exactly.
you've got to clean up on the now. I will say, just for the whole league this week, there was a lot of penalties. I don't know if
Mhm.
the refs are just being a lot more pinpoint on the penalties and all trigger happy on the flag, or
Mhm.
if teams have gotten slot. This has just been an ugly year of football. I think we can both agree on that. Like you look
Yeah,
at
and
these games and none of these are like you have close games, but none are really good games.
yeah, I mean, we haven't seen the typical nail biter fashion type games yet, I feel. I mean,
Unless
coming
you're
from
the
a Vikings
Eagles.
fan, every game's been a one score game, but like, you know, yeah, Philadelphia was a one. So that's why that game was so exciting. Um, one of the reasons, but like you can't tell me the Giants Buffalo game was exciting to anyone who watched.
No.
I watched that game. It was not an exciting game, but like just because it's close doesn't mean it's a down to the wire nail biter. But Philadelphia and the Jets and San Fran and Cleveland, the endings to those games were very exciting to watch. So, or at least the fourth quarters rather. And so, you know, but other than that, Minnesota's all one score games. Like I mean, all the turnovers just kind of make a difference. But like, also, it's Minnesota, so you kind of just wonder: are they gonna give up, or are they gonna come back, or are they not? That's pretty much the only question you got to ask there. And then, yeah, the refs. My opinion. Ever since the Chiefs, that like anybody who plays the Chiefs, flags fly at the worst moments because they have to fly at the critical moments to give the Chiefs the win. So I mean, three penalties in one play. One was even called and then picked up. So you can, do with that what you will. Um, but I mean, overall, and in every game that I've seen, I've watched a ton of games across the league, and obviously I've seen the games from my Vikings and everything. But like the refs are throwing these flags well after the plays are over, which makes no sense to me. And they're also whistling plays dead, which should give offenses free plays most of the time as well. Like I saw a game, I believe it was one this past week. I forget which one it was. I think it was um who was getting who to drop off. So I think the Jets got Hurts Hurts got the Jets to jump off sides, and he took the snap, and the refs immediately whistled it dead, and he threw it in the ground because he was pissed, and rightfully so, uh, because he was hoping to get a free play off of that, which is normally what the case is, but they decided to whistle it dead, um, and but aside from that, it's just every flag just seems to come in well after the play is over, like that Jets Chiefs game, that comes back to me as well. So I mean, something's going on with officiating. I mean, if they're gonna have New York review everything, then that would be something to announce to the league and say if we have late flags is because New York saw something while watching overhead, with all the technology we have. But at that point, again, something needs to be addressed to the fans and to the teams and saying like, hey, there could be late flags if New York catches something. So, but I think that's just going to make it worse for the game because you're probably going to catch a lot more penalties that way. But maybe that'll just encourage teams to play cleaner football. Other than that, I don't really have much to say though.
And I think it also an interesting thing we thought coming into this year, we looked at the NFC and we thought it was the weakest it has been in a long time.
Hmm.
Honestly, I have to say it's the opposite. Now, I'm not saying the AFC
It's
is weak,
ultra competitive.
but it's ultra
Ultra competitive.
competitive. We're seeing NFC teams beat AFC teams now. Carolina might
Mhm.
lose. It's a whole other thing. But a lot of teams that we thought were going to be good in the AFC this year either
Mhm.
have struggled coming out of the gate or just haven't lived up to expectations. I know
Or
Jackson.
they're like the Jets. Your expectations completely dropped with Aaron Rodgers going out, and now they're 3-3, and you're like, they've exceeded my secondary expectations.
But it's like Buffalo, you can't feel good about that win. Jacksonville has been up and down. Miami's been mostly good. There's been one or two times that they've looked kind of suspect. Cleveland,
Mhm.
who knows what they are any time of the week. Baltimore's had a bunch of injuries. Tennessee, who knows what you're getting every week. And now with Ryan Tannehill out,
Yeah.
we'll see how long he's injured or if he comes back. Not sure if they have a
Denver's Denver's about just as bad as they were last year,
if
if
not
not
worse.
worse. The
Kansas
Colts
City
were
has
great until Anthony Richardson coming out.
yeah. And Kansas
Gardner
City hasn't
Minshew.
really looked that good either. Now I know
They've
that
looked beatable in almost every game.
now I know that usually they sleepwalk through the season and then turn it up once it comes playoffs, but I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of the teams in the league are starting to catch up to them, if not
Yeah.
surpass them. Um, and then with the Chargers, I don't even know what's up with them. Like,
Yeah. And then the Raiders are there at 3-3 too, but they're the worst 3-3 team I've ever seen.
yeah.
So,
Well,
I
especially
mean,
when on any given Sunday you could see you could expectingly see three quarterbacks play for the Raiders.
yeah, you
Jimmy
could.
Garoppolo cannot stay healthy.
And Jacksonville even, like I know they've got a great record and they've had an impressive showing in London, which is their second home stadium. But like when you really look at who they've beaten, aside from Buffalo and London, they haven't really pulled out that great win that you've seen yet.
What's it
So
been?
I mean,
Indy, Buffalo, and the Texans.
yeah, I believe so. And then they lost to the Chiefs,
Did they
and I don't
beat
know.
Atlanta?
Huh?
Did they beat Atlanta?
I think that was the other London game. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they beat
Okay.
Atlanta and Buffalo, which I mean, Atlanta, you could, yeah, I think I picked Atlanta for that game because I forgot about Jacksonville's just dominance in London. But yeah, I mean, they're both good teams in my opinion. That one was a cornfield, but Buffalo should have beaten Jacksonville, but Jacksonville just London.
Yeah.
So, and Buffalo decided not to get there till Friday, which was just crazy. Um, but yeah, I mean, the AFC and the NFC are looking ultra competitive. Like the Vikings are at 2-4 even, and they look like we could essentially sneak into the 7 seed with as much chaos as is going around on the league. Like if we finish 8-9, we could theoretically take a 7 seed from somebody. Like
Mm,
if
I'm
we
not
get
sure
a
about that.
win over somebody that's competing for it. Like I mean, I don't like the records are pretty even. Like most teams are 3-3
Yeah.
in the NFC. So I mean,
But it's more, I don't expect any seven seed to be 8 and 9. I see it more 9 and 7 or 9 and 8, 10 and 7, rather than anybody being 8 and 9.
yeah, we'll wait and see, but I'm just saying, like I don't think the 7 seed is going to require much for the NFC. I think it's going to come down to tiebreakers because there's a lot of teams who I could see competing for that 7 seed right now. Um, I mean, look at Washington. Washington's the basically the NFC version of the Raiders, in my opinion. They're probably the worst 3-3 team I've seen. So, but maybe that's just because they broke the streak against the. I think I'd feel differently if they just beat the Bears, but they just end every streak, whether it's good or bad. So, um, but yeah, I mean, looking through the games, I mean, both of us went 8-7, I believe, on the week. So that was the worst showing from us, I believe,
It
this
wasn't
year.
great.
So I think because that was for sure my worst week.
I think that
Um,
was mine. Because
so
usually I've been like, now it's also, I think we had two teams. It was the Packers and Steelers on a bye. So
yeah,
we're in that weird time of the year that people are on bye. So the amount of games aren't even week to week. Because I
mhm.
think this upcoming week we have a couple teams on their bye.
Yeah, we've got four
So,
teams this week,
yeah.
I believe. Yeah, and I
So
think we had
only,
four last week, but I'm not positive.
it was just two. It was
It was two.
and Pittsburgh.
Gotcha. No, I mean the week before.
Oh no,
Right.
that was four because I think it was Seahawks, Tampa, and
Browns.
two others. Browns,
Browns and
somebody else.
somebody else. Yeah, I forgot who the other team was, but oh well. Um, but yeah, so there were definitely four the week before, and now there's two, but now there's gonna be four again. So the records will change, but I mean, is that's the closest to getting half right and half wrong, or more wrong than right than I've been this year. So a lot of teams changing perspectives, a lot of teams pulling off upsets or just, doing something crazy. So I mean, and Cincinnati is back, Um going back to your game, it's hard to trust because the first few games of the season, Joe Burrow has not looked great. And then they started to pick it up, and you kind of look like, okay, they have a real test now with Seattle coming to town. Like, how's that going to look? And it was interesting because Joe Burrow was great to start, and the first half was pretty well for them, and then they just did nothing offensively
Yeah.
the second half.
They scored
Um,
14 points on two drives to begin the game, and then we held them to a field goal the rest of the game. Our
yeah,
defense played really well afterwards. It was just the injuries on our offensive line finally caught up to us. Now, luckily, we have a get right game against Arizona this weekend. I know Arizona has been tough, but I think we finally seen that Arizona is still a tough team.
mm,
No game in the NFL is an easy win unless you're the Raiders um, or Carolina right now. But
yeah,
we've kind of seen, yeah, that's competitive, but they've not really been in any games since the Cowboys game a couple weeks ago when they won. The 49ers game, they were never really in it. Um,
they were in the Giants game till they lost.
well, that's been since that was before the Cowboys game. Um,
Right.
and then this week against LA, it just never really was close. So I just feel like Arizona's kind of finally come back to earth, but I also just feel like the Cowboys just didn't show up that weekend, which is
Yeah, I
completely
mean
possible because that's just Dallas.
they're a team you can't overlook. So as long as you show up, you should be able to beat
Yeah.
them. So I mean, and Carolina to a degree is that team as well. It's just that the teams have shown up to play them, or have at least made halftime adjustments to beat them.
Yeah.
So
Well,
um
Carolina still hasn't gotten a win yet, and honestly, looking at their schedule, they might not get one. It's just
yeah,
a
I
bad
mean
team.
that's what I'm saying, which sucks because that goes to the Bears. So
Yeah.
but
Bears
but
might be. Oh yeah, speaking of the Bears, like there were some quarterback injuries this week, including Justin Fields, which
yeah.
we'll see how he's doing, but
Yeah,
potentially the
Daniil
Bears
Hunter
could
gave
be.
gave him a sack and he landed on his wrist awkwardly. He was negative for a broken wrist, I believe.
Wasn't Daniil Hunter
Um,
the same one that sacked Aaron Rodgers and broke his collarbone?
Anthony Barr,
Okay.
who
Well,
I believe is on the Cowboys unless he retired. So
something about your Vikings and injuring that division's quarterbacks, but moving on.
I
Um,
don't think that's a thing, but okay.
well, you've injured two quarterbacks now, so
Let me look at Seattle's history of injuring quarterbacks.
for us, it's
Um,
just been Carson Wentz.
but
Like,
But I mean, no, I mean, we didn't. So you could argue that, the Anthony Barr one was a late hit or whatever, and Aaron Rodgers fell on his collarbone because he had already released the ball, right? That's different. Daniil Hunter sacked Justin Fields. It's just how he fell on his hand. Like, Daniil Hunter had nothing to do with Justin Fields' injury. Like, when you look at the play, it's how he fell, like with the ball. He landed on his wrist awkwardly. So, like, you could make an argument that Anthony Barr, hurt Aaron Rodgers, but you can't make the argument with Hunter on Fields.
I'll look back at the
It's
play
just
and we
it's
can talk
something
about
that
that
happens in
later.
football, huh?
Well, I'll look back at the play later and we can talk about that later.
Okay, sounds good. But yeah, uh, speaking of that, I haven't brought up the Vikings Bears game until now because I don't think anyone should watch it. No one should subject themselves to that torture. I mean, this tells you what you need to know right across the board. Passing leader was Kirk Cousins with 181 yards. The rushing leader was Deontay Foreman with 65 yards, and the receiving leader was DJ Moore with 51 yards. The Vikings won that game.
Barely
Exactly.
against a backup quarterback.
Who looked better than Justin Fields did.
Well, I could
So,
also say the same thing with Tyrod Taylor and Danny Dimes with New York.
yes, you could. So, two backup quarterbacks have outplayed their starters. Now, granted, I think what happened in the Vikings game was that Brian Flores had an amazing plan for Justin Fields because he was in jail for pretty much the entire game. Like he got a couple runs here and there, but he was not able to find anybody downfield. Um, so DJ Moore had one catch for like a few yards before the backup quarterback came in. So we held Justin Fields in check. And I think when it became the backup quarterback, they decided to lay off and play press, and that was the wrong or play zone, and that was the wrong move. They we kind of backed off the blitz because we didn't need to keep, we don't have the mobile quarterback to watch out for. So uh that happened to be the wrong move there. But I mean, his plan for the give credit to the Minnesota defense. Like that was great showing by them. Justin Fields wasn't able to do much. But and then the backup quarterback comes in and did pretty well. I don't remember his name. He's got a cool tattoo sleeve on his arm, but so he'll hopefully he fills in well next week. But that was his first taste of the NFL, undrafted rookie. So good to see him do well and get a rushing touchdown for himself. So, but yeah, that game was ugly. Definitely won by Minnesota's defense. We won the turnover battle 3-1. So, I mean, that's definitely a way to win the game when we actually win the turnover battle.
Finally.
So, finally, taking us a while. So, and I will add that instead of a fumble this week, it was an interception. So maybe, just maybe, we're getting there. But it's not going to be next week because we got the 49ers. So they're going to force one out defensively if we don't make the fumble ourselves, or the interception ourselves. So as in Kirk just throws it to the other team, because it is Monday night. So I'm not going to say that it'll happen next week, but perhaps in the future we could see a non-turnover game from Minnesota. Just once. Yep. 1 out of 17. But anyway, yeah. So that game was just won by, ironically, Minnesota's trenches. We dominated offensive line and defensive line, and like I said, the turnover. So that's probably the only team we can win in both trenches, because even against Carolina, we didn't win both trenches there. So I think Chicago might be the only team that we do that, depending on how Denver's lines look against us. So whenever that game rolls around, I think that's in a couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting. But going to Seattle at Cincinnati, uh, how does it feel? How does it feel to be on a losing end when I'm on a winning end for once? This is the first and probably only for the podcast this year.
Knowing this loss was at least against a good team, not like Tampa Bay or the Chargers, but it was a
Dude,
rough game
The Chargers are a good team, and Tampa Bay is a good team. We just didn't know that.
until they get 20-6 against the Lions, but whatever.
The Lions are tied for the first seed in the NFC.
Yeah, and we beat the Lions, so tough luck.
Good job. But you had to go to overtime to do it.
Yeah, but it was also at the Lions. But moving on. The defense made some good adjustments later in the game. Just starting out like with them scoring 14 points in 2 drives is just something we got to clean up on. But like the rest of the game, we basically locked them down to just a field goal. But Geno Smith sadly, it just seems to be a weekly thing where I'm saying he did not play his best game, and it's getting to the point of I don't. Is Geno Smith a good quarterback? Yes. Will he get us anywhere? I don't believe so. We'll see if he can bounce back, but I feel like I keep saying that. Um, Defense, which has been an issue so far this year, really came to play after those first two drives. Um, Usually we're the ones sucking on third down efficiency and giving them every single third down. We kept them to 3 of 11 on third down. We went 5 of 12 on third down. We held them to 214 passing yards with us getting 381. I know JSN had 4 catches, I believe, for 40 something yards. So nice to see him finally getting the ball. I know there's been some talks and worries about his involvement and is he really the real deal for where the Seahawks drafted him. Um, Rushing 87 to 46, and then penalties, 7 penalties for 64 yards, with only them getting 5 penalties for 43 yards, and Geno Smith with 2 picks. So, and we even held the ball for 9 more minutes. So all the stats would tell you, other than the turnovers, which we also picked Joe Burrow off once, so 2-1. Um, Most of the stats would say we would win that game, but we just kept getting stopped in the red zone, especially on the last 2 drives where we had the ball inside the 20 and neither time could we do anything. And as I was saying earlier, this was the first time the injuries on the offensive line have really seemed to come back to bite the Seahawks. I'm hoping this was just coming out of a bye week where we were a little where some teams need the rest. I think it might have been we had guys coming back from injury. They're still rusty. I know Charles Cross was back, and I think he was injured within the first 2 weeks. So getting him back into it, um,
Mm.
hopefully against the Cardinals this week, we can finally shore up the line and hopefully get them some reps together. Because biggest thing with the O line, it's a unit. You can't keep trying to reshape it, makeshift it. You have to have the line get reps. So, like we see teams like Detroit where they keep the same line, they get better and better and better. Where like
Mhm.
last year, where we saw the Rams, where they kept make shifting, trying to piece it around and hope to find something, it never really got there. And what we saw with the Seahawks, yes, they had injuries, but those guys were getting reps. Those guys were
Yeah.
becoming a unit. And yes, we were playing the Giants in Carolina, but Giants have a sneaky good D line. I feel like they're good in the
Oh
trenches.
yeah.
And I think Geno Smith only got sacked once, or it was just like one QB hit. So, and you saw what we did to their defense compared to what Buffalo did. So, one of those things where I feel like this was just one of those games. It was in opposing territory. It was a 1 o'clock game. Um, and then going into next week, was it a 1 o'clock game? Yes, it was. Never mind. But hopefully with Arizona next or this Sunday, hopefully we can bounce back and get back to it. Just one of those trap games. I know DK Metcalf went out for a hip injury for a little bit, but I think he finished the game.
Yep. And he had 69 yards.
Yeah,
Nice.
but it's just glad to see that the defense is starting to make some adjustments. Jamal Adams, I think, finished the game, which that's great to see after what happened 2 weeks ago with the Giants game where he couldn't get through the first drive. So hopefully keeping him healthy, getting him back into the defense, finally getting that unit together, and after finally getting it healthy, where for the first few weeks where yes, Seattle's passing defense was absolutely horrendous for a while, but those were times that we either didn't have Witherspoon, Adams, or Tariq Woolen, which that Giants game was the first game we really had them together until that first drive happened where we lost Jamal Adams. So this week was the first week we really had him there for the whole game. I don't know if there was any injuries. I'll keep an eye on the injury report for the upcoming week, but I don't think any of them got injured during the game. So getting that unit some reps and also just holding the Bengals to 3 points for the rest of the game against Jamar Chase and that wide receiver room, I have
Yeah.
to say, is an improvement from what we saw last season. So a lot of young guys. Hopefully, as we get on for the season, just the whole team gets better. Where some teams injuries are going to make them worse. They're just aging. This is still a really young team, so hopefully, just the experience makes this team better and more unity, especially in the O line as we move along. But that's all I gotta say for that. So, anything else we need to talk about for this past Sunday and Monday? Well, it seemed like we lost Tyler, but that should be it for this week. Please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time.
I am back.
Oh, I just ended, or I
Okay.
was ending it now. So, but anything else you wanted to talk about before we end?
Yes, sorry for the technical difficulties. My internet cut out briefly. I was going to bring up two things before we left. Was speaking of the lines, specifically the defensive lines. The Giants and Minnesota's defensive lines, I would actually say, are very similar in the sense of if you keep the offense on long, uh, then the defensive line is going to be well rested and they're going to actually make more of an impact, like you saw in the Minnesota Chicago game and the New York and Buffalo game. They were able to make the impact and stop the offense and hold them to a respectable score in both those games. Whereas if the offense can't keep drives going, i.e., Minnesota's in the second half, you let off the gas, the backup quarterback and everything can start to, dink and dunk on you and things of that nature. Um, and start to wear down that defensive line. So I think, that's another important thing is making sure both sides of the ball are balanced. And that's why you see teams like the Eagles and the 49ers typically do well. And that's one thing I want to bring up with the Eagles, as well as Lane Johnson, one of their offensive linemen, really good. He got injured in that Jets game, and I think they definitely felt that loss as after he went out, Jalen Hurts was getting pressured on it seemed like every single time he was running for his life. So definitely an important thing for teams to keep track of. And the last thing I wanted to end on was that Matt and I actually did speak two things into existence. So as you know, Matt uh, and I previously reached an agreement last week about no longer using any voodoo magic or speaking any players' injuries or anything of like that into existence. But he had already previously mentioned Ezra Cleveland. He is now being evaluated for injury. He went out during the Bears game and was replaced by Dalton Risner, who did really well, as all Vikings fans predicted he would, and we wanted him to go in for Ed Ingram. But good thing there, Ed Ingram has been playing a lot better. So Minnesota Vikings fans are, that's what we want to see. We either he had to step up, play better, or get benched for Dalton Risner. And you know what? Signing Risner lit a fire under him, and now he's playing better. So that's great. But give credit to Matt for calling that injury there. Hopefully that's the last one since we have an agreement. But I will also say that last week we did talk about the Bengals receiving core, and Matt was calling the Seattle win because they're down T. Higgins, and he was like, and we both couldn't remember who the second one was, and I was like, I think it's Tyler Boyd. Matt looked it up, was like, it is Tyler Boyd. Who scores a touchdown on the first drive? Tyler Boyd. So um nice to see that kind of predictions go both ways, but hopefully we stop predicting bad things and we can start predicting good things. So um that'll be something to look forward to in the future. But I just thought that was kind of wacky that both of us got a prediction in, or spoke something into existence, so to speak.
I don't think
So
you can exactly predict anything good for your Vikings next week, though.
Well, no, I'd have to predict something for Seattle.
No, but
It
you're
only works
saying
for the other teams, Matt. It only works for the other teams.
no, but I'm saying I don't think I can predict anything good for Minnesota next week.
Predict Justin Jefferson coming back from IR after only 4 weeks.
All right, fine.
There's something. Predict that when JJ comes back, we start winning games on our like not as tough of a schedule that we have before we face the Lions twice.
I'll say
And
that you
since
won't have any major injuries next week.
cool. um yeah. But anyway, um yeah, I mean hopefully there'll be some good things you can predict about Minnesota. And there are always good things I can predict about Seattle. Like hopefully Jake Bobo gets his first touchdown against Arizona next week because I liked watching him in your game. Because he had his coming out party against Minnesota in the preseason.
Yeah.
So it was great to see he was doing better than JSN, in my opinion, in that Bengals game. So um doesn't look like you're using JSN much. I know you did say at the beginning that he's gonna be a project wide receiver, but it looks like Bobo's getting a lot more work as far as like production from what he gets than JSN. So we'll see how he develops there. But
I think it's just one thing is how the routes work out. I think JSN, um, he was the one that was coming. I think he was also coming off an injury, if I'm correct. Um, so
I
just
think so. He had something dealing with him from college, but
yeah.
yeah.
So just getting him back into it and also just building him up. I think it's also one of those things where we have two good guys on the outside.
Mm.
Where can we really fit JSN in now in the end zone? Yeah, Bobo has been the one that has gotten, I think, more targets than JSN, but it's also just who's open. Like with Bobo, you're having probably what the fourth best cornerback or defensive back
Yep.
guarding him. Like
Yep.
that gets to the point of like, all right, so who's going to guard him? Because then, especially, we still have some decent tight ends. You have to always worry about our running backs, and then you have three really good wide receivers. So it's just one of those. The opportunities that are created for him are better than what JSN will get, which hopefully, as JSN gets more into this offense, like we saw this week, where he got 4 catches on 5 targets, hopefully, just
Yeah.
the more confidence that he and Gino can build in each other, we'll start to see that rise. And hopefully, I love Tyler Lockett, but I know he's starting to age, and I don't want to burn him out too quickly. So hopefully, we can start bringing his share. I want him to have good numbers, but just not having to depend on him having to win us the game, as you see here, 94 yards, the leading receiver
Yeah.
for the whole game, and that's in a game with Jamar Chase. So that's saying something. But just making sure he doesn't have to take the whole load. DK, hopefully we can get him healthy. So being able to have those lower receivers on the depth chart, be able to have a bigger load at the share can help the front to not get burnt out as we get for the season. So it's one of those back and forth things, but I'm not
Gotcha.
too worried about JSN yet. If we get to the end of the season, he's still not having that big of an impact. We can have that talk then.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've got the complete opposite situation going on in Minnesota. Like, with Justin Jefferson out, we've got to rely on our backup wide receivers. And, KJ Osborne was having the yips, having some drops, here and there, some crucial misses with some certain targets. And he stepped up in the Chicago game. I believe he had 4 catches for 88 yards or something, or not 88, 48. Yeah. 4 catches, 48 yards, decent for a wide receiver three, now wide receiver two with JJ out. Jordan Addison stepped up in that game, got a touchdown, our only offensive touchdown, I believe. Well, yeah, because there's only two. Um, so love to see that, but what I hate to see is again the play calling is just our offensive our head coach needs to give up play calling to our offensive coordinator because he can't handle everything, and it's proving because every single time He's running plays that have the check down option, and Kirk Cousins is always going to take that check down option every single time because he's going to hold on to the ball too long, or he's not going to hold on to it long enough. There is no in between. Because
First
what's weird
check
is
downs.
exactly our offensive line is actually holding up pretty well, so it's making him double think everything. And as he does that, the DB can gain back ground that the receiver had gotten from making one move. So he's got to take those deep shots when they present themselves, get those wide receivers involved, and he's got to do that. But he can't do that when the play calling doesn't have anybody going past the sticks. So I just I love that Jordan Addison is doing all he can do to step up. He's running what is called for him. He's running his routes. He's doing what he's supposed to do, and he's winning on most of his routes. Kirk Cousins just has to find him down the field, and Kevin O'Connell needs to call plays that allow Kirk Cousins to find him in the field and not check it down. So that'll be something interesting to watch, but love that those two stepped up. I hate that TJ Hawkinson and Alexander Madison still have drops and they still can't get it together, but hopefully it's just something mental and they can they can have a good get right game, and that'll go back to being they'll go back to being good players. But personally, I think in the run game, Cam Akers needs to start taking a heavier load in terms of rushing. Alexander Madison needs to be that power back for the 3rd and 1 situations. I think that's who you should turn to. Whereas Cam Akers should be your back to try and get 10 yards on first down. But TJ Hawkinson with JJ out, he's one of the main guys we've got to look to be the hero. So he's got to step up. So looking for him to finally have a good game at some point, and it's got to happen soon, this week or next. So we'll see what happens. Coming out next will be our predictions video. We will be predicting week 7. Hard to believe we're already a third of the way through the NFL season.
Until we get to December, and it's gonna be like we're still in this season.
Yeah, yeah. And especially once the Vikings get eliminated from playoff contention, it'll be like the draft isn't here yet. Why not?
And then we'll
So,
get to the off season. It's begging for football.
oh yeah, it's a never-ending cycle of pain. But football is still awesome, so it's worth
Yeah.
it. Anyway, we will fight through the pain as long as you continue to fight through however long our videos turn out to be. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in predictions.